Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It has been exactly 3 weeks ago that the Filipino nation roared in jubilation over the dramatic retaking of the World Flyweight Championship by an obscure and very self-effacing young man at the expense of an arrogant and high-flown Korean. Anyway, today, coffee shop circles, barber shop circles, and even sari-sari store circles are still abuzz with lively talk about what has to be one of the most dramatic, one of the most brutal, one of the most bloody, and one of the most fiercely fought championship fights in Philippine history since the glory days of Gabriel Flash Ilorde and the Thrilla in Manila. Well, today, specifically tonight, we are going to respond to the clamor of millions of boxing fans throughout the archipelago for a replay of that 15-round epic. And in addition, we have also assembled a glittering cast of who's who in sports, as well as some of the central figures in that great event, for them to share with us some of the valuable insights behind what has to be the greatest event so far in 1988 for Philippine sports. Yours truly and Manny Piñol had the privilege of covering that fight from ringside, and so I'd like to turn you over to my partner in crime here, Mr. Piñol.
Yes, you know, after that fight, Joe, many people were asking me, when is the replay? Tonight is the replay. So, stay with us and witness how Rolando Bohol won the World Flyweight crown.
But before that, we would like to introduce some of our central figures in that drama I spoke about. Well, you've already seen two of them. To my right is, of course, the leading man, the big actor of that great feat, Rolando Bohol. Now, this guy is a very strange fellow. I've always referred to him as the United Nations man. You see, his father comes from Leyte, his mother comes from Bacolod, and his name is Bohol. And to his right, well, you, of course, recognize the very charming face of the gallant widow of what is, or who is, probably the greatest Filipino fighter ever to put on a pair of gloves. This is Mrs. Laura Ilorde, widow of the late, great Gabriel Flash Ilorde. And in case you're missing the Flash, well, you don't have to miss him very much longer, because beside or on the lap of Mrs. Ilorde is somebody who promises to be another great world champion. His name is Bye Ilorde. He is the grandson of Laura and the original Bay. And to the right, well, ladies first before the handsome gentleman. Well, of course, you will also recognize a very fine lady whom I have often described as the Lady Dean of Philippine sports columnists. You recognize her mainly because of that very colorful feature of hers during the PBA coverage. It's called Time Out. This is Miss Beth Celis. Hello, Beth.
Hello.
Just a hello from her just sent my heart a-fluttering all over again. Somebody who also sends my heart a-fluttering every time I see him because of his swashbuckling looks is the newly elected president of the Philippine Sports Writers Association, and barely had he sat on that chair that he already started getting things going. And he has one thing going against some people in Clark A. Bears, I think, but let's not talk about that right now. He is Rudy Navarro.
Hello, Joe. Good evening, boxing fans.
Well, Beth and Rudy will join Manny and yours truly in trying to get some insights from Lando here and Mrs. Ilorde regarding the fight itself. Now, mainly, Laura, I know that a lot of people are wondering how you were able to convince Chang Ho Choi to fight here in Manila.
Originally, Chang Ho Choi was offered a return bout with Dodie Penalosa. And at the same time, we also offered a fight for him here in the Philippines with Rolando Bohol. But they would rather fight in November. Rolando Bohol versus Chang Ho Choi in Los Angeles of 1987. So everything was set for that date. But about the time that I was about to leave, there was a telegram from the manager of Chang Ho Choi, and they wanted to replace Rolando Bohol with Medal, because according to his telegram, two Asians fighting together would mean a loss in the States. So he asked to be excused and to substitute Medal for Rolando Bohol, and we refused, because we knew then that the crown would go further and further away from us. So we offered them to stage it in the Philippines instead. But they gave us only December. That means only 3 weeks to prepare. And it was really impossible. But finally, we were able to convince them to hold it in January 16. And that's how the fight got here.
Yes, this fight did undergo a number of postponements, didn't it? That's why I was beginning to worry about Bohol getting a little overripe for the fight itself.
We were scared about his condition also. Because, you know, a boxer, when he has been conditioned already, it's very hard to postpone the fight.
You should know, Lara, you slept with a champion boxer for so many years. Anyway, the champion boxer I'm referring to also happens to be the very same man who handled personally the training of this boy during the early years of his fighting career. As a matter of fact, even as an amateur, hindi ba si Gabriel ang nagturo sa iyong personal nung amateur ka pa lang, Lando?
Dumating ako dito, 1983, so I'm already graduated in high school. So, nung high school ako, nag-start ako ng amateur. Second year high school ako. Nag-represent ako ng maunang area meet, sunod provincial meet. Nag-champion ako ng provincial meet, kinuha ako ng Bacolod team. Represent ako ng West Visayan meet. Nag-champion ako ng West Visayan meet. Represent ako ng palarong pambansa. Region 6. Ang silver medalist ako, natalo ako kay Baha. Controversial ako yun. Tuwan
Sino
score.
ba ito? Hindi ito si Joseph.
Ito, ang brother niya, brother. Brother ni Joseph. So, yun itong match kami sa, the National Open, Dagupan. National Open yun.
Binawian mo
Pinali
siya.
ko siya. Doon ako yung champion National Open. Pagkatapos nun, ginawa ko ng Choros dito sa kay Gabriel. Kinuha ko ng kay Gabriel. Talagang dito ako natuto kay Gabriel. Nag-amateur ako dito, mga 9 fights. Tapos nanalo ako. Tapos sabi kay Gabriel, pagdating ng 1984, January 18, sabi niya, gusto mo na ng professional. Sabi ko, kuya, kung sa tingin mo ba medyo okay na ako, ako talagang gusto ko na. Pero kung sa tingin mo medyo okay ng suntok ko, di papayag ako.
Marahil napunan niya kanina, mga kaibigan, ilang close-up ang binigay ng director natin si Margie Herrera kay Lando. Napunan niyo, maganda lalaki naman. Pero kung nakita ninyo ito ng mga 3 linggo nakaraan, mas malaki pa sa 1 milyon yung kanang pisngi nito sapagkat... Ano nga ba yung nangyari dyan? Yan, yung sa ulo, yung sugat mo nito sa ulo, yun ang pinanggalingan ng napakaraming dugo. Pero yun, natitiya ko, hindi suntok ang pwedeng nagpabukas yun. Dahil walang kamao na pwedeng magpabukas ng sugat dito sa baon ng ulo ng tao. Pero yung dito talagang suntok yung umabot sa'yo.
Second round, yung basta makikita mamaya sa mga round to yun. Yung umi-street ako parang nagkasalubungan eh. Tapos nasuntok pa.
Nasuntok.
Lalong lumaki. Round 7 pa, sarado na talaga.
Rudy, I can see a quizzical look on your face. Would you like to shoot a question at either Mrs. Elorde or
Alam mo,
Rolando?
Joe, itong si Bohol, magaling na boksingero yan. Pero hindi alam ng maraming tao na gustong magpari.
Maridismay ang mga chicks niyan.
Sabi nga sa mga listeners natin kung bakit naisipan mong magpari.
Actually, hindi ko naman pinabalak talaga maging pare. Talaga ako, ko yun, religyoso talaga ako. Well, alam ko din naman kung hindi dahil sa kanya, hindi ko rin narating to. Kasi sa tulong din ng manager ko, siyempre, di ba? So, mga ganun siguro. Hindi ko malaman kung sino nga nagpalabas niyan.
So sa ngayon, wala ka nang binabalak na pumasok sa kumbinto.
Pero talaga halos everyday nasa ako simbahan.
Pero everyday pumupunta ka, nagdadasal ka na.
Sumunod lang siya sa kanyang manager at sa kanyang tigaturo dahil alam ko si Gabriel at saka si Lara talagang very religious sila eh. Sila nga nagtatagyata ng St. Rita School
Hospital.
Doon sa Parañaque. Pero wala ka ng balak talaga magpare.
Alam mo,
Magmadre, ayaw mo din. Biro lang.
Isang bagay lang masasabi ko kay Rolando Bohol. Siyang isang boksingero na who is willing to learn, who is willing to take criticisms. Bago lumaban si Rolando Bohol, if you remember, pinanood natin yung sparring niya kay Elisa Bautista sa Elorde Sports Complex. At sinabi ko sa'yo, Joe, sabi ko, yung bukas na depensa ni Rolando Bohol, sabi ko, tatamaan siya ng straight ni Chang Ho Choi. And I wrote about that in my column in Tempo. Instead of, getting offended by that criticism, Rolando Bohol and his trainers tried to correct that flaw in his defense.
And it worked marvelously
And
on the
it
night
worked.
of the fight, eh?
Kita mo nung first few rounds ng laban, tinataas niya yung kanyang kaliwang kamay. At saka bumabali siya. That was the strategy that beat the hell out of Chang Ho Choi.
Yeah, it drove him bananas, actually.
Right.
Beth, did you get to see the fight on television, at least? I didn't see it at ringside, so I'm sure you weren't there.
I was watching from television.
And what were your impressions?
No, I'd like to ask Lando first
Okay.
a question. Ang nasirang Bay Elordeng nag-train sa'yo, no? Ngayon, ano natutuhan mo sa kanya? Tsaka, kasi marami nakapansin na yung puso ni Bay. Nandun din yung puso
Yung
mo pa
tapang.
yung tapang.
Ewan ko lang kasi, hindi ko alam. Pero sinabi rin sa akin bago siya mamatay. Nasabi huwag ka lang mag-abuso. May kinabukasan nga, sabi niya, huwag mo kalimutan yung taas. Mag-ensayo ka mabuti. Pagdating ng ensayo, mag-ensayo ka. So, tinuro yun sa akin. Basta lahat naman yung kung paano yung strategy ng asunto. Sinunod ko naman lahat na iniwan niya sa akin.
Siya ang idolo mo.
Siyempre.
Beth, you said you were going to ask another question.
I'm gonna ask you a question, Joe, because I know that you have this uncanny ability to predict with amazing accuracy the outcome of a fight.
Kamukha ba ako ni Madang Amaro Auring? Pero hindi ba? Sige.
Hindi, si Rana Mariano.
Yeah.
How did you predict this one? Kasi nakausap ko yung mga talagang boxing experts, parang hindi sila masyadong believe na mananalo si Rolando eh. Tell me honestly, what was your prediction?
I went on record during the first press conference, which we held about a month and a half before the fight, right, Laura?
Yes.
I went on record that I felt that he had a 70% chance of winning against Chang Ho Choi. Of course, I was greeted with a lot of very skeptical looks from the press people on hand. But anyway, I'm glad that he came through. Well, I've known this young man also. We've been following his career, especially through ringside at Lourdes, and we felt really that he had a great potential. The only thing was, one thing funny about that, Rudy and Manny and Beth, about that fight was, although he is the local boy, more people knew Chang Ho Choi than they did Bohol. Hindi ba?
Right.
And that was because of Penalosa's, or rather Chang Ho Choi's conquest of Dodie Boy Penalosa. And he was veritably an unknown quantity on that night of the fight. And he really showed them how, didn't he?
Alam mo, Joe, kami hindi tatanong ni Beth Celis, but we will volunteer. 2 weeks before the Rolando Bohol Chang Ho Choi encounter, Tempo, through the columns of Mr. Rudy Navarro and myself, predicted that Rolando Bohol would win by decision. And we were proven right.
You were proven right, I know.
Yeah, I said Bohol will win on points, and he will, if he loses, it will be by knockout.
How well did you do in the Tyson fight?
Oh, I picked Tyson too.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is getting to be very interesting. We will elicit a lot more information from Rolando Bohol here and Mrs. Laura Elorde as we go along. But in the meantime, I think you're aching to see the replay of the fight itself. We will be back towards the midpoint of the fight. In the meantime, how about a few reminders? Or even ache for it. Anyway, we're about to lead into the replay of the fight itself. Just one last question kay Lando bago natin ibigay yung replay. Ano bang pakiramdam mo nung nandun ka sa dressing room bago umakyat mo sa ring?
Parang talagang considerate ako. Wala, kahit may nagtatanong sa akin, sabi ko, huwag niyo na ako kausapin pagkatapos na ng laban kasi nagko-concentrate talaga ako. Gusto ko talaga manalo eh.
Nakumpiyansa ka ba nun?
Hindi, talagang hindi ako nagbigay ng kumpiyansa. Once in a lifetime breakthrough.
Hindi mo sabihin hindi overconfident.
Hindi ka overconfident, pero may tiwala ka sa sarili mo na kaya mo.
Siyempre.
Ayan. Bueno mga kaibigan, bago tayo bumalik, tingnan muna natin ang first 7 rounds of the Bohol Choi fight. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're back with us here at the resounding Memorial Coliseum, this hallowed sports facility right along Vita Cruz, where a big championship event is about to unfold in just a few minutes. Already atop the ring is that good-looking challenger from Bacolod City. His name is Rolando Bohol, and tonight he will be trying to avenge the loss of Dodie Boy Penalosa on September 5 last year, when Chang Ho Choi of Korea wrested the IBF Flyweight crown away from the Filipino, thus stripping the Philippines of its only world boxing title. Well, Rolando Bohol comes to the ring with very impressive credentials. He has had a total of 24 bouts, winning 22 of them. Well, actually winning only 21 of them, losing twice via split decisions, and scoring 1 draw. And we shall have a panel of judges, which will consist of 1 Filipino judge, 1 Korean judge, and 1 neutral judge. The referee, who will not be scoring the fight, is also from a neutral country. They will be properly introduced by our ring announcer, the former lightweight champion of the Philippines back in the late 50s and early 60s, Tommy Romulo, in a very short while. Chang Ho Choi came to Manila about a week ago to get acclimatized to the weather sultry, Manila weather, sultry in comparison to Korea, which is now in the grip of one of its worst winters. And he will be emerging from his locker room in a very short while. In case you've just joined us, you're watching Manila Main Event 88, a presentation of Galorde Enterprises, coming to you over PTV4. And sitting beside me, as always, in these World Championship affairs, is that eminent sports columnist who has made boxing his specialty, Mr. Manny Piñol.
Tonight, Joe, Rolando Bohol will try to realize the dream of the late Gabriel Flash Elorde. That of giving the Elordes another world champion after Gabriel himself. Will he be able to do it? I think he will be able to pull an upset tonight.
Well, you are not really talking out of your hat when you mention that this is a dream of Gabriel Flash Elorde, because Rolando Bohol was a protege personally trained by the Flash himself before the Flash went to that great boxing arena in the sky 2 years ago. And Rolando Bohol, before the Flash died, was pegged by the great Elorde as a future world beater. Well, tonight he has come to the crossroads of a brilliant ring career. Tonight it's either the deepest portion of the valley or the peak of the mountain, if we want to be poetic about it. And incidentally, would you like to talk to that good-looking guy beside you, Mr. Piñol?
Yes.
All the girls have been going gaga about him since he made his entry.
We have here with us Mr. June Sorial, one of the persons behind this title bid of Rolando Bohol. And June will be giving us some highlights of Rolando Bohol's career.
Well, I think this will be one of the hardest fights of Bohol. Although I still believe that Bohol has a pretty good chance, because the Korean has weight problem. For the last 3 days, he's been trying to make this weight.
But he made it.
That will be one of the factors that I think Bohol's chance to win the title.
Just to set the record straight, he made the 112-pound limit of the Games and Amusements Board weigh-in this morning, eh?
Yes.
Okay, so the fight will go on.
Is it true, June, that Chang Ho Choi will be moving up the junior bantamweight division, win or lose tonight?
That is what his promoter, Mr. Ho Yun-chun, told us tonight, that win or lose, he may have his boy move to junior bantamweight to fight Galaxy of Thailand.
Thank you very much, Mr. June Sorial, one of the persons behind Rolando Bohol's title bid. And here's Joe Contado once again.
Well, actually, you were talking about June Sorial's contribution to putting together this fight. The guy who really moved heaven and earth to get this fight, or to turn this fight into a reality, is the Grand Patriarch of Philippine boxing himself, the old man of June Sorial, and that's Papa Lopez Sorial. Because Papa Lopez Sorial himself has had great faith in the ability of Rolando Bohol to wrest the world flyweight title from the Korean. Now, to refresh your memory, on September 5 last year, Chang Ho Choi applied some very controversial tactics in stripping Dodie Boy Penalosa of the IBF World Flyweight crown. Now, he did that via an 11th round knockout. Now, this Korean is not exactly popular with Filipino fight fans because of the manner in which he took the crown away from Penalosa.
Yes.
Well, he has a chance to redeem himself tonight.
In the 8th round of that fight against Penalosa, Chang Ho Choi hit Dodie Boy with what appeared to be a headbutt that led to the closure of Dodie Boy's left eye and led to an 11th round knockout loss by Penalosa. Tonight, Chang Ho Choi is going to erase that memory. He's going to try to erase that memory, that rather the belief that he won his title by a fluke.
You know, the referee in that fight came into a lot of flack because people sort of blame him for the way he officiated the fight. Now, I personally am not inclined to heap all the blame on the referee. But anyway, just to set your mind at ease, it's not going to be the same referee tonight. It's going to be a Hawaiian-based official who will act as the third man in the ring. His name is Abe Pacheco. Well, I'm sure you've run into Abe Pacheco in some of the international fights you've been seeing on television, especially those via satellite. Okay, into the ring comes Chang Ho Choi. And as we expected, he gets a big round of boos.
Yes. Instead of an applause, he gets the boos.
But this guy is unfazed. He doesn't give a damn about the people. All he cares about is winning a fight. And that's the kind of stuff that makes for a champion gladiator, Mr. Piñol.
Yes.
Whether you like him or not. Chang Ho Choi displayed a lot of arrogance in the press or media conference held at the Lourdes Sports Complex only last Monday. He said he would rather die than lose to Rolando Bohol. Well, let's hope we're not going to have a funeral
I think
when this fight is over.
Chang Ho Choi is going to use his fighter rich advantage to the hilt tonight, Mr. Joko. Rolando Bohol will be digging into that midsection of the Korean.
Well, the Korean is 3 inches taller than Rolando Bohol, an advantage which could be turned into a disadvantage by Rolando Bohol depending on how he fights this fight. And I know for a fact that his brain trust, Debut Elorde, and his own trainer, Ding Cabanela, himself a former world contender, have worked out a very, very smart fight plan to cope with the advantage of the Korean in height as well as his vaunted right straight.
Yes, if you would remember, Mr. Cantada, a few months ago we pointed out that Rolando Bohol is vulnerable to that right straight, which is Chang Ho Choi's most potent weapon. The handlers of Rolando Bohol tried to check that, and they were able to correct that. And they have instructed Rolando Bohol to bob and weave, and weave below the right straight of Chang Ho Choi and dig into the midsection. That's the strategy tonight.
Well, the popular feeling among those who were at ringside to watch the press public preview held at the Lourdes Sports Complex last Monday is that if the fight is going to go the distance, then Bohol should win it by decision. But the Korean will always have the capability to pull off a knockout at any time during the fight because of that strong right hand.
Yes. My prediction, Mr. Cantada, at this point is that Bohol will win this fight by decision. If there's any knockout, it will be Chang Ho Choi. But his chances of winning this fight by knockout are very slim.
Very slim because he doesn't have a very impressive knockout record. To take a look at Rolando Bohol's record, we find that he has only scored 3 abbreviated bouts in his career, which covers all of 24 fights. On the other hand, Chang Ho Choi has already scored 11 knockouts in 14 victories.
Yes.
I will be filling you in on more background information regarding these 2 fighters as we go along. Okay, we'll give you the exact record of Chang Ho Choi right now. It's 14-2, which means he has won 14 times, lost twice by decision. He has scored 11 knockouts in those 14 victories. He wrested the IBF title from Penalosa September 5 last year. I've said that already many times. He is fighting outside of Korea only for the 2nd time. His first time to fight outside of Korea was against Dodie Boy Penalosa. And what a debut outside of Korea that was, winning no less than a world championship right in his first crack.
You know, if we're talking of experience, Rolando Bohol is more experienced than Chang Ho Choi. Because before he fought Penalosa, Chang Ho Choi only fought twice as a 10-round fighter. Rolando Bohol, on the other hand, has fought a lot of very, very difficult fights, although these were against not so very popular fighters.
Ironically, Mr. Piñol, although Bohol has had more experience than Chang Ho Choi, Choi is his senior by 2 years, because Rolando Bohol turned 21 only on Christmas Day last year. That's right, he was born on December 25 of 1966.
Yes.
While Chang Ho Choi was born February 10, 1964, which means that Choi is actually 2 years older than Rolando Bohol. And Miss Herrera, I would appreciate it very much if you would warn me beforehand before turning the cameras on me. That way I can remove my spectacles, which makes me look like Mr. Scrooge all the time. Okay. To give you more highlights of Rolando Bohol's career, we'd like to mention that among his most prominent victims are Alan Makitoki, Manasseh Pase, and Cristino Simbahon. His last fight was a unanimous decision victory over Rodney Coney of August 30 last year. We covered that at the Lourdes Sports Complex.
Yes, we did.
And another very interesting facet of Rolando Bohol is that he is a rarity among Filipino fighters in the sense that he is one of the very few we know who was able to finish high school and is now currently taking pre-college courses.
Yes, and he's planning to become a priest afterwards, or an engineer, Joe.
A priest?
Yes.
I also dreamed of becoming a priest at one time, and no, you will not believe that, Mr. Pignon.
I do believe you. I have faith in you, my friend.
But anyway, Rolando Bohol has some great plans ahead of him. So whether or not he succeeds in taking the crown away from Chang Ho Choi tonight, one thing is certain, this boy will certainly not wind up in Paluca Alley.
Yes, our cameras flashed just a while ago. The judge from Hawaii, Louis Reyes, who is one of the three judges in this championship fight. The other is Chung On of Korea. And the third referee, rather the third judge, is Alex Villacampo of the Philippines. If you would notice, there are
right now, Mr. Piñol, we have focused on the championship belt to be awarded the winner of this fight. And that's the hand of Tommy Romulo, who's acting as our ring announcer tonight. In case you missed the supporting bout, which saw a unanimous decision victory by Edel Geronimo over the Korean Cup Soup Song, we'd like to mention once again that Tommy Romulo is acting as our ring announcer for tonight. Tommy Romulo, for the benefit of those old-timers in the ringside circles, will remember him as the lightweight champion of the Philippines towards the late 50s. He also tangled with Flash Elorde 3 times.
Losing twice and fighting to a draw once.
Which is quite a record when you think that you were up against the great Gabriel Flash Elorde himself.
I think we should also explain, Mr. Cantaro, why the belt that is how would you call it, that is being put at stake tonight, has been named the Pancho Villa belt.
That's right. Okay.
Yes. Pancho Villa, of course, everybody knows him, is the first Filipino world champion. Aside from that, he is a flyweight, or rather, he was a flyweight. And he was the second man in boxing history to win the world flyweight title with a 7-round knockout over Jimmy World in New York in 1923.
You know, if you're scoffing at the record of Pancho Villa, let me tell you something. Pancho Villa is regarded by Ring Magazine as the second greatest flyweight champion in history, second only to Jimmy Wilde, the same guy he dethroned.
Yes, that's the reason why he was named to the Boxing Hall of Fame in 1961.
And this Pancho Villa belt has been put up by the Flash Elorde Sports Foundation to be given to the winner of the fight. And it will stay with the IBF champion for as long as he is reigning as champion. It will eventually be transferred to whoever will take the crown away from him. So it's actually a perpetual belt that will move from hand to hand as the years go by. So let's hope that that metal there is made of honest-to-goodness gold so it doesn't rust with the years.
To be awarded to the winner of this contest is donated by Mayor Mel Lopez. This Pancho Villa Golden Belt is donated by our beloved President of the Republic of the Philippines, President Cory Aquino.
I think you call this
To
Cory
be awarded to the winner of this championship fight. I would like to ask each and every one of you to rise for the Korean national anthem, followed by the Philippine national anthem. And the Philippine national anthem will be sung by a little girl by the name of Marguerite Mara Mara. First, the Korean national anthem. Margaret, Mara, please come over.
Okay, Father. Yeah.
Balang maging perlas ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay, lupang hinilang, tuyang ka ng magising, sa manlulupig, di ka pansisil, sa dagat at mundo, sa simula, sa langit bukaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa bulan minamahal, ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagtitingting, ang bituin at araw niyang kailan pa may di magdidilim, lupa ng araw ng luwan, hatid pagsinta na buhay langit sa piling mo, ang ligaya na pagmamahal, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Thank you.
Well, a very stirring rendition of the Philippine National Anthem by a young girl. Her name is Margaret Mara. Well, more announcements now. This time it's going to be the introduction of the principals in this World Championship fight from Tommy Romulo. This bout, incidentally, is big stage here at the Rizal Memorial Coliseum. Here's Tommy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Dodie Enterprises Incorporated, in coordination with the Gabriel Flash Elordi Foundation, proudly presents Manila Main Event 88. This fight is for the International Boxing Federation Flyweight Championship of the World. In the blue, weighing 111.5 pounds, the foremost challengers, the Philippines' brightest hope for the new world title and the pride of Bacolod City, our very own Rolando Bohol.
That's home court
His
advantage for you.
opponent, the man who wrested the crown from Dodie Boy Penalosa, and the red corner, weighing 111.5 pounds, the reigning flyweight champion of the world, the Tiger from Seoul, Korea, Chang Ho Choi. This is a 15-round contest sanctioned by the International Boxing Federation. The referee for this contest, Mr. A. Pacheco from Hawaii, and judges Chung Wen from Korea, Mr. Alex Villacampa from the Philippines, and Luis Reyes from Hawaii. A 15-round contest.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the varied reactions of the crowd to the introductions of the two principals in this fight is not simply the result of the home court advantage enjoyed by Rolando Bohol. It's simply that Filipino fight fans remember only too well the infamous day of September 5, 1987, when Chang Ho Choi took the crown away from Dodie Boy Penalosa in a very dubious fashion.
And yes, the Filipino fight fans want Rolando Bohol to regain the title lost by Penalosa. We will be seeing whether Rolando Bohol can do that tonight in a few moments.
Well, one thing is certain, the winner of this fight will deserve a toast with Andy Player's Special Whiskey, recent winner of the International Award for Beverages in Düsseldorf, Germany, its fourth major prestigious award in less than 3 years. Andy Player Special, truly the winner's whiskey.
I'll drink a bottle of that, Mr. Contara, if Bohol wins tonight.
We'll finish a whole carton, as a matter of fact. All right. Abe Pacheco is the third man in the ring. I already mentioned that he is based in Hawaii and is figured in a lot of international bouts sanctioned by the International Boxing Federation. As introduced by Tommy Romulo, the judges are Luis Reyes. He is also based in Hawaii, and he is also the neutral referee, or rather the neutral judge. Alex Villacampa will be representing the Philippines in the panel of judges, and a gentleman named Chung Un will be representing Korea in accordance with IBF rules, and that's Rolando Bohol going to the body. This is going to be the familiar pattern of the fight. Rolando Bohol will be going to the body because he figures that the Korean is weak in the breadbasket.
Yes, and if you would notice, Joe, Rolando Bohol has his left hand up close to his left face.
He is only too aware of the lethal weapon lying at that right hand of Chang Ho Choi. Here comes Rolando Bohol scoring with that left hand. Bohol is keeping the fight very close. He's adhering to a very carefully contrived fight plan, and that is to stick very close to the Korean to neutralize the devastating right hand of Chang Ho Choi. A big row in the background. Well, it might be premature. Here comes another combination by Rolando Bohol.
Left hand by Rolando Bohol.
Bohol in the immaculate pair of pants. While both are wearing white-colored pants, but the Korean's is trimmed with green.
But Bohol should always remember that right straight by Chang Ho Choi. Another good combination. Bohol should throw more to the midsection, Joe.
You know, Rolando Bohol has never gone 15 rounds in his entire career, Mr. Piñol, but neither has Chang Ho Choi, because the fight with Penalosa lasted only 11 rounds. So and 15 rounds is unfamiliar territory to both protagonists.
And the more physically conditioned fighter tonight.
Bohol scoring heavily in round one. Chang Ho Choi on the retreat. But remember, Manny Piñol, in that fight against Dodie Boy Penalosa, the Korean also had a sluggish start, but he picked up very quickly in the succeeding rounds.
But right now, Rolando Bohol is showing that he can take the Korean's punch. He got tagged there with the left, or rather with the right straight, Joe.
The dreaded right hand of Chang Ho Choi has been felt by Rolando Bohol, and Bohol just shook it off. But he's still keeping that left hand in defense, setting up virtually a Maginot line to protect himself from the right hand of the Korean. In the meantime, Bohol is sticking to his fight plan.
He is waiting for the Korean to throw that right before he comes in.
Beautiful left counter by Rolando Bohol, and that shook the head of the Korean. A brilliant round one for the Filipino, and we'll be right back.
Carlsberg, 140 enjoyed in.
And to witness this good-looking young man from Bacolod City make his bid from ring or for ring glory. It was unquestionably the big round of Rolando Bohol. We're using, incidentally, the 10 points must system of scoring, whereby the winner of each round is awarded 10 points mandatory, while the loser gets proportionately less. In that kind of a round, that would readily be seen as 10 points for Rolando Bohol and 9 points for the Korean. If there had been a knockdown, it would have been a 2-point disparity. 2 knockdowns would have meant a 3-point disparity, but you never gave the loser of a round less than 7 points.
Now Chang Ho Choi trots towards the center of the ring.
This is round 2. We're scheduled for 15. Well, Rolando Bohol is not famous for his knockout prowess. He has only scored 3 knockouts in 24 bouts, but then he just might add Chang Ho Choi to his list as his 4th victim.
Look at it right, yes.
You know, Chang Ho Choi's devastating record of 11 knockouts in 14 wins does not seem to face Rolando Bohol one bit.
But he is not that durable, Joe. He has been knocked down in his career, too. And Rolando Bohol knows that. He comes in.
And Bohol keeps the pressure on. He goes head hunting and smartly switching to the body. Upstairs and downstairs. From all directions, the Korean is getting it. He is in a war. You know, he downgraded Rolando Bohol in that press preview last Monday, referring to him as only half the fighter that Dodie Boy Penalosa is. Well, I think he's going to have to change his mind very soon.
Rolando Bohol still sticking to that strategy. Look at that. He avoided the right straight by bobbing and waving. He ducked low. A good straight there by the Korean.
You know, so far the Korean has acted like a one-arm bandit, utilizing only that right hand of his, which has now become telegraphed because Rolando Bohol is prepared long and hard for that.
Yes. A left-hander usually has a to right straight, Joe. See, the Korean can play there.
Tremendous left uppercut by Rolando Bohol, and the Korean was stopped dead in his tracks. Bohol pursuing his quarry. Chang Ho Choi is in trouble. But he's coming back strongly. That right hand stopped Bohol dead in his tracks.
Bohol staggered the Korean with a good left there. And has successfully avoided the right straight.
You know, this is what Rolando to give the fighter.
Yes, good.
The Korean fighter distance. Now a shot to the midsection by Bohol. But he ought to fight a lot more close.
Yes. He has to be very careful. That's right.
Well, Rolando Bohol is a southpaw by now, as you probably noticed. But then remember that Dodie Boy Penalosa himself was a southpaw, and so southpaws are not unfamiliar to this Korean.
Rolando Bohol is getting careless with that jab, Joe.
That's right.
Chang Ho Choi is scoring with that jab.
And Bohol is giving the Korean some distance, but he comes in with a grazing overhand right.
Oh, good
Here
straight.
comes Bohol with another salvo.
And I see traces of blood from the nose of Chang Ho Choi.
Another brilliant round for Rolando Bohol.
Rolando Bohol has been a very, very obedient boxer. He has followed what his handlers have told him before he went into the ring with Chang Ho Choi. That is to avoid that right straight.
Well, I'll tell you something, Manny. Rolando Bohol must have gotten sick and tired of watching that tape of the fight between Chang Ho Choi and Dodie Boy Penalosa. He must have watched it 1,000 times to study all the weaknesses of the Korean. And he, along with his brain trust, consisting of Bibot Elorde, his manager, and Ding Capanela, his trainer, have worked out a very, very carefully contrived fight plan. And so far, Bohol has stuck to that plan, and it has worked wonders for him as we move into round 3. We're scheduled for 15.
There's a swelling below the left eye of Chang Ho Choi as of the moment, Joe. Courtesy of Rolando Bohol's left.
You know, Chang Ho Choi, notwithstanding the fact that he already beat a southpaw by the name of Dodie Boy Penalosa, still is not comfortable coping with this southpaw because this southpaw has 2 good legs in contrast to Dodie Boy Penalosa.
That uppercut missed.
Bohol keeping that left hand very close to his face, still very wary, very cautious of that right hand in the Korean. He comes back with a beautiful counter to the face.
Look at Rolando Bohol. He waits for the right straight before he delivers his combinations.
You know, Rolando Bohol is dead set on making this Korean rue the day he underrated his fighting ability.
Yes.
Actually, Chang Ho Choi did not think very much of the boxing abilities of Rolando Bohol. That's why he didn't train half as hard as he did for the Penalosa fight. But now he seems to be paying the price for it. But we might be talking prematurely, and we might be celebrating a little too soon. This is only round 3, and we're scheduled for 15. Another beautiful left by Bohol.
Brilliant performance by Bohol in this first 3 rounds.
You know, I've seen a lot of Rolando Bohol's previous fights, but I've never seen him in this kind of a superb condition.
Yes, he has prepared long and hard for this, Joe.
He must have trained at least 250 rounds of sparring for this fight. There's that left hand again. And Bohol is exuding a lot more confidence now than he did in round 1. He has felt the sting of that right hand of the Korean, and he figures he can take it. The Korean is hardly throwing leather at this point, only some tentative left jabs.
He is cocking his right, Joe. He's waiting for a moment.
Yes,
The
that right is constantly cocked, yes. You cannot dismiss that right hand of his yet. You see, he has what is known in boxing as the puncher's chance, because no matter how far he may be behind point, he can quickly turn the complexion of fight around with just one punch.
Rolando Bohol should throw upper punches, uppercuts. He's missing with his straight right. That's good. That's a good punch.
That's a good combination. Leading off downstairs and then going for the head. Okay, there's a good right hand by the Korean, which should tell Rolando Bohol not to give him the distance for it.
Yes.
The Korean, in his typical awkward fashion, is trying to fend off Rolando Bohol, who, by the mere fact that he is 3 inches shorter, has to keep the fight very close. There's another explosive combination by the Bacolod boy. It's getting to look better and better for the Filipino as we see the end of round 3 and prepare for round 4.
And keep this style of fighting, Joe. He will be going home to Sukat Paranaque tonight wearing the champion's belt.
He will be going home to the Lourdes Sports Complex in a blaze of glory.
And he will not be failing his mentor, Gabriel Plas Elorde, and the Plas's widow, Laura, who has carried on the Plas's dream of producing another world champion.
You know, the Korean is going home with a $40,000 purse for this fight. And that's quite a lot for a promoter to put up. But Mrs. Laura Elorde said, never mind the money. We want the title.
Yes. It means a lot to Laura and to the Elorde.
There's the bell for round 4. Rolando Bohol rushing out of his stool to meet the Korean. The Korean still looks befuddled at this point. He can't solve the fighting style of Rolando Bohol. It's not only the fact that Bohol is a southpaw, it's also the fact that Bohol keeps that left hand very close to his face.
And that was their solution to that right straight by Chang Ho Choi. Keep the left hand close to the left cheek.
And look at Bohol. He is following every instruction given him by Ding Capanela and Bebo Elorde. A push by Rolando Bohol, and he apologizes profusely to the fight fans. You know, Rolando Bohol is known to be a very clean fighter, but if the Korean should decide to dirty tactics, Rolando Bohol will give it back to him in kind.
An uppercut should have been the punch there. That's the punch.
The Korean, in the meantime, is looking very frisky, but is hardly throwing leather, only tentative lefts. Another good left straight by Rolando Bohol. The Filipino, brimming with confidence, launches another attack, ducks a left by the Korean, who has hardly scored with a significant punch so far in this fight. And now Rolando Bohol is dealing with Chang Ho Choi the way Rocky Marciano used to deal with his much taller opponents, going into a deep crouch.
Bohol's cornerman should now tell him to stop throwing straights. He should start throwing uppercuts.
Did you notice the Korean was squinting after absorbing that right hand from Bohol?
Yes. He now is complaining of headbutting. Oh, good right by Rolando Bohol.
He follows it up with another right, and the Korean backtracks. The Korean is on his bicycle, and he gets it to the breadbasket. So far, it's been a shutout for the Filipinos as far as our unofficial scorecard is concerned. But then again, remember, the Korean has what is known as the puncher's chance, that of turning the fight completely around with a devastating right hand. But let's not forget, Rolando Bohol has never been knocked out or knocked down in his life.
Good punch to the midsection. There's a cut now over the right eye of the Korean, Joe. And I think that's going to affect him.
In addition to having been clobbered right in the belly button with a devastating left.
Yes. Blood is flowing now from the cut over the right eye of the Korean.
And Bohol has given Bohol a target to aim for.
Yes. Bohol is going for that now.
Another smart left counter by Bohol. Oh, beautiful right.
Yes.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you will pardon us if from time to time we get a little carried away. We are, of course, neutral sportscasters, but you cannot take away the fact that Manny Piñol and I are also Filipinos.
And we are avid, rather rabid boxing fans. And we want Rolando Bohol to win tonight.
But looking at it from a very objective viewpoint, I have Rolando Bohol ahead on my unofficial scorecard by a shutout.
Yes, even an amateur, rather a newcomer in boxing would know that.
Well, I have in my head by 4 rounds to nothing, using the 10 points must system of scoring. That would give Rolando Bohol 40 points against 36 for Chang Ho Choi.
4 points
that's the bell for round 5.
But there's a swelling right now below the right eye of Rolando Bohol. And I think that was inflicted by the continuous jabbing of Chang Ho Choi.
You know, earlier I overheard some words of wisdom coming from Jun Sarial addressed to Rolando Bohol. Walang kumpiyansa, Rolando.
Yes.
Yes.
A good left. But for a moment, Rolando Bohol left himself open there for that right straight.
And ladies and gentlemen, in case you've just joined us, you're watching the IBF World Championship fight between Chang Ho Choi, the defending champion from Korea, and Rolando Bohol, the #1 IBF contender from Bacolod City.
Blood is again flowing from the cut over the right eye of Chang Ho Choi, the champion.
Our third man in the ring is Hawaii-based Abe Pacheco.
Good shot to the body.
That right uppercut to the body by Rolando Bohol has found its target time and again. Chang Ho Choi seems to be virtually defenseless against that right uppercut.
Yes. Rolando Bohol has mastered that right straight.
And you know why Chang Ho Choi cannot unload that right hand? That's because he keeps moving to the right flank of Chang Ho Choi and away from the line of fire. Oh, he
Rolando
scored
Bohol
with
got
that right hand.
there with that right. He should be careful with that now. Oh.
The Korean is bleeding from the left eyebrow, and that eyebrow just got it again from the left hand of Rolando.
Now Chang Ho Choi is starting to score with his right.
Rolando ducking that right hand.
Oh, another good
A
right
staggering right by Chang Ho Choi. I think that stunned Bohol.
Yes. A series of good right straights by Chang Ho Choi.
Bohol is trying to shake the cobwebs off his head. That right hand came unexpectedly like a bolt of lightning. But here comes a right hand from Bohol himself. Well, Bohol's advantage is that his punches come from inside.
Yes. Oh. Good combination by Rolando Bohol.
A fierce exchange in the middle of the ring.
But right now, the Korean is starting to score.
That right hand of Choi is wreaking havoc on the fight plan of Bohol. And Bohol doesn't seem as confident as he was in the first 4 rounds.
Oh, Bohol is hurt. I think Bohol is hurt, Joe.
He ran smack into a left and right combination by the Korean, and the Korean knows it only too well. He's unloading that right hand time and again.
Bohol has got to be very careful with right.
And Bohol is now fighting in staccato fashion, coming up with solitary shots instead of the combinations he unloaded in the first 4 rounds.
That's the way to fight Chang Ho Choi. Wait for that right.
Good left by Bohol to end round 5. Well, looking at Rolando Bohol from where we sit, he is telling us in no uncertain terms that he's all right. He's all right. Don't mind me.
Yes. Jun Sarial and myself were signaling him to bob and weave. Stick to that old strategy.
He paid off very handsomely in the first 4 rounds until the Korean started connecting with the right hand. But then if Rolando Bohol will simply keep his wits together, he can still neutralize that right hand. And there's the exhortation from Jun Sarial. Walang kumpiyansa, Rolando. And like a very obedient ward, he keeps his left hand very close to his face. Okay, now he ducks that right hand. He's not going to the body as much as he did in the first 3 rounds, though. And he's giving the Korean distance again with which to unload that right hand.
There's a swelling now over the right eye of Rolando Bohol. A slight swelling.
Well, but his face doesn't look half as bad as Chang Ho Choi's does. Chang has a nick under his right eye and has a bruise on his left eyelid. Well, it's been a familiar strategy here for Rolando Bohol, constantly leading with that left hand.
Yes. But he sometimes leaves himself open to the right.
Oh, this Bohol can take a punch.
He can.
You know, other fighters would have gone down after absorbing that right hand, but he came back strongly with a combination of his own. But no question about it, his knees were buckled by the Korean then.
Good uppercut by Rolando Bohol.
You know, there's always that sword of Damocles hanging over the head of Rolando Bohol, because one accurate connection from the right hand of the Korean can send him to dreamland, the way it has sent 11 previous opponents of the Korean.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter whether you're leading by 100 points in the scorecards. If you get knocked out, you lose the fight.
Rolando should now go to the midsection, as he did earlier in this fight.
Okay, Rolando Bohol going into deep crouch again, bobbing and weaving, connecting from long distance, but he probably will do better to stick closer. A feint right by the Korean. Oh, the Korean has a very destructive way of throwing that right hand. From time to time, he throws it as a powder puff punch, and then he suddenly puts it and so behind. But Bohol comes hurting him.
Yes, good.
Lead from kicks by Rolando Bohol. Right and left to the face of the Korean. The Korean is on the retreat. The Korean's knees are spaghetti at this point. If Bohol can sustain this, he just might score a knockdown. But why is he laying back? Why is he laying back?
Yes, he's waiting for a good timing, a good chance to throw that those combinations. Another good left.
Remember how Dodie Boy almost had the Korean on the verge of a knockdown in their own fight last September, but he was not able to follow it up. I hope Bohol doesn't make the same mistake. Okay, the Korean has recovered his wits due to the failure of Bohol to follow up the advantage when he had the Korean's legs wobbly in the middle of the round, and the Korean will now have 60 seconds to rest his limb. Rolando Bohol and Chang Ho Choi. At stake here is the IBF version of the 112-pound crown, which was wrested by Chang Ho Choi from the head of Dodie Boy Penalosa on September 5 last year. Rolando Bohol, the young, good-looking lad from Bacolod City, has a very good chance of regaining that crown if he can just stay away from the knockout punch of Chang Ho Choi. So far, he must be miles ahead in the official scorecard.
Yes. For a while there, I thought Rolando Bohol would stray away from his fight strategy. But thanks heaven, he came back to his fight strategy, that's to bob and weave and deliver punch to the midsection.
My unofficial scorecard shows Bohol ahead by 5 rounds to 1 for the Korean.
Yes. And that was a very close round.
Yes. You know, the International Boxing Federation is probably the only boxing body in the world now with still a 15-round stipulation for a championship fight.
Yes, it's the only boxing body right now which still holds championship fights in 15 rounds.
It was the WBC who started the trend by reducing the rounds to just 12, and then the WBA followed
suit. Another good right by Chang Ho Choi.
But Bohol will have to keep his eye out for that right hand of the Korean, which is constantly cocked. And now the Korean is utilizing his longer reach to keep Bohol at bay, but he comes in with the left of the breadbasket. Perhaps Bohol should fight a little bit closer, bob and weave a little bit more, go into a deeper crouch.
He should crowd this Korean.
He should not allow the Korean to get the distance necessary to uncork that right hand, and he comes in beautifully with left to the face.
Oh, dangerous. Dangerous right. Oh! Bohol!
Bohol is stunned.
He got careless there.
But like an enraged tiger, he comes back strongly with a combination. Boy, you got to hand it to this guy from Bacolod. Dodie Boy Penalosa buckled up under the strength of that right hand, but Bohol comes back. But he's not yet out of the woods. The Korean is still sticking that right hand to his face. Bohol is starting to see stars.
Bohol is hurt. He should be very careful with right there.
But tremendous aplomb being shown here by Bohol. Notwithstanding those devastating rights thrown in his direction by the Korean, he has managed to come back strongly.
Good.
And there he goes, connecting with the left of the face. The only question is, can Bohol weather the storm for all of 15 rounds? Good shot inside to the face by Bohol. But he's still shaking the cobwebs out of his head as a result of that staggering right he took from the Korean about 30 seconds back.
Yes.
And he runs smack into it again as he connects with his own right.
Another good right by the Korean. Oh!
The Korean has found his range again.
Bohol should not give to the Korean enough room to throw it straight. He should crowd the Korean. That's the way to fight. There's a big
And
crowd.
suddenly blood is oozing out of the scalp of Bohol. I don't know why it escaped the attention of the referee. Any moment now, he probably would stop the fight to summon the gut physician to take a look at that scalp wound. Well, it's a bloody cut, but it's not in a very critical zone. It's only a scalp wound, so nothing really to be worried about. It's a bloody cut, but not necessarily a very dangerous cut.
I believe it was caused by headbutt, Joe. A punch that have caused that.
A bloody round, and we shall return with round 8. Well, Mr. Pignol, in the absence of any indication to the contrary by the referee, that the cut will have to be presumed as the result of a legitimate blow.
Yes,
but then, I think it was inflicted by a headbutt.
A punch could not have caused that.
Well, a punch could not possibly cause a scalp wound because the part where the cut was inflicted is probably the hardest part of the human body other than the knees.
Yes. And there's the hair to protect you from the punch.
Well, in any case, Liberty Lourdes has already applied medication on the cut, and it's not really a dangerous cut because it's on the scalp. If it were on the eyelids or the eyebrow, it would be a dangerous wound, but it's not. And so worried about. The big worry for Bohol is still that right hand of the Korean.
Yes, and now Chang Ho Choi has gained some...
That's right. He came out of his corner to answer the bell for round 8 with an arrogant mien.
There's also a swelling on the right eye of Chang Ho Choi.
And Bohol is again giving the Korean a lot of distance. And there's that right hand again.
Bohol should get close. That's the way to fight the Korean.
You know, you got to hand it to this Korean. He is as tough as they come.
Yes. Good straight by Rolando Bohol.
That's his lethal weapon, the left straight. But it hasn't caused that many knockouts, so don't look for a swift ending here for the Filipino. If this fight goes the distance, it's very likely Bohol will win the championship. But don't forget, the Korean has that dreaded right hand, which can explode anytime like a grenade. Isolated shots on the dark by Bohol. A left hand thrown without benefit of a lead. The familiar fighting stance of a southpaw. Chang Ho Choi playing it very smart, now missing with the right. The Korean's mouth is wide agape.
But he... Oh!
Breaking left by Bohol. Sends the Korean on the retreat. Bohol follows it up with a left-right combination.
Chang Ho Choi is hurt.
A series of 5 big Sunday punches uncorked by Rolando Bohol. And the Korean is still in a vertical position.
The midsection.
You know, one thing about Rolando is he's not able to follow up his advantage at all. See, he's allowing the Korean enough time to recover his wits. And then he'll have to cope with that right hand again.
Good luck.
And in the background, you know what home court advantage means.
Yes. Rolando Bohol now being egged on by the crowd. Oh.
Well, if all that cheering in the background is not enough to get the adrenaline of Bohol to a peak level, then nothing can.
Bohol now in trouble, wisely moving out of Chang Ho Choi's range. There's a big swelling now over the right eye of Rolando Bohol, and that's very dangerous, Joe.
Yeah, that's more dangerous than the scalp wound he sustained much earlier.
Yes.
That's the end of round 8. You know, Manny Pignol, In the background, you can hear the delirious chant of the 8,000 Filipino fight fans gathered here with the Rizal Coliseum. They're yelling, Bohol, Bohol, Bohol. Well,
Yes,
it might be premature to celebrate because the staggering right hand of the Korean has time and again put Rolando Bohol on the verge of a knockdown. You possibly cannot see it on your television sets. Neither can the people there in the reserve section or in the bleacher sections. But at close range, you can see that those rights are taking their toll on Bohol.
right.
This is round 9 now in progress. We're scheduled for 15. Neither fighter has gone 15 rounds in their careers. The farthest Choi has gone was 11 rounds, and that was against Dodie Boy Penalosa.
Chang Ho Choi's job has been very busy, and that weapon inflicted that injury over Rolando Bohol's right eye.
You know, the inability of Bohol to keep the pressure on the Korean has prevented him from scoring a knockdown. But right now, he's scoring heavily again with isolated shots, starting off with the right hand. That right hand is getting in with impunity. Now, he's going to the bread basket. And the Korean's face is contorted in pain. But that's a deceptive look because one moment he doubles up in pain and the next moment he's unleashing a devastating right. And Bohol had better watch out for that.
Yes, that right arm, that right punch, right straight by Chang Ho Choi is still the deadliest weapon.
You know, that right hand of Chang Ho Choi reminds you of the hammer of Thor of Ingemar Johansson.
Yes.
In the heavyweight division many decades back.
Right now, I think Chang Ho Choi is tiring, Joe.
Well, who wouldn't? He's taken a lot of licks to the body as well as to the face.
Yes. His efforts to reduce his weight are now taking their toll.
Well, remember, he came to Philippine shores 6 pounds overweight.
Yes.
And that was only less than a week ago. And so he had to shed off 6 pounds in a hurry. And he looks dehydrated at this point. More shots to the side by Bohol. He follows it up with the left to the face, sending the Korean practically relieving. Another head jerking left to the nose by Rolando. But the Korean is still in a vertical position. He's still as frisky as ever.
Yes. Oh, good right by Rolando Bohol.
Oh, they're getting into some dangerous sequences of headbutting here. The Korean is beginning to score again with left and right combinations.
Bohol is allowing him to score. Good.
Bohol goes under.
Yes.
Digs a left to the bread basket of the Korean, but the Korean comes back with a right of his own.
Yes, and Rolando Bohol is hurt. Rolando Bohol is hurt.
Bohol is making a big mistake, slugging it out toe-to-toe with the Korean.
Yes.
This is the kind of fight that the Korean wants. He wants this kind of distance, and he wants Rolando trading leather for leather.
Bohol should get out of the ropes. Hang on to the Korean for a while.
Bohol cannot possibly match the strength of the Korean, especially the right hand. And so he better get away, abandon that tack of trying to trade blow for blow. Round 10 coming up very shortly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, 9 rounds down. 6 more rounds to go. We're on the verge of the 10th round. You know, if you're enjoying this fight, well, you'll enjoy it better with a glass of Andy Player Special Whiskey on the Rocks. Andy Player Special, the only way to go if you're a whiskey connoisseur. Well, I have Rolando Bohol ahead by a nautical mile in my scorecard, Mr. Piñol, and this, I would like to stress, is an unofficial scorecard. But then again, you can probably throw away the scorecards once that Korean gets that right hand going.
Yes. Bohol has got to be very careful.
Lando ducking a right by the Korean. You know, Bohol's pants were immaculate white when he entered the ring, but now it's almost crimson red with his own blood.
So much blood has flown out of that cut on his scalp.
You know, Lando right now is standing kind of erect, which is a very dangerous tack to take against the Korean. And he's applying a lot more footwork than he did in the first few rounds.
That's what he should be doing. That is what he should be doing.
But you see, what he's doing is giving the Korean distance with which to connect with that flight.
Yes. But right now, I think he's trying to regain his second wind.
Oh! See, that makes him a sitting duck for the right hand of the Korean. And the Korean is getting away with bloody murder with that right hand again. Okay, he misses with it right now.
Rolando Bohol is in trouble again.
Bohol's got it in the... I don't know why he is keeping a distance away from the... He should stick closer.
Yes, that's what he should be. This is what he should be doing.
You see, the Korean is just now preparing to unload that right hand again, setting him up with a couple of left jabs. You see, his longer reach is allowing him that luxury.
And Bohol's right eye now is starting to close.
Remember, September 5, Dodie Boy Penalosa's right eye started to close before the debacle. A good left kick to the body by Bohol, but he went smack into another short right by the Korean. He's being a little reckless at this point.
Yes, he is.
Oh! That may be good as long as he can get the better end of the deal, but it's futile and an exercise in recklessness to trade blow for blow with the Korean.
He should move away right now.
Good poke to the head by Lando, but he's still keeping himself open. Although he's got both hands very close to his face, the Korean is getting the distance he needs. Oh, what a classic this fight is shaping up to be. Beautiful left to the face by Bohol.
A good uppercut.
Well, Lando had the last say in that round, but I don't know how the judges are going to score that one. In any case, one way or the other, round 11 is going to unfold very shortly. There on your screens, ladies and gentlemen, the wounded tiger from South Korea, Chang Ho Choi. He is right behind on points, but he is unfazed, and he has come very close to scoring knockdowns after connecting solidly with that right hand of his, which is something Bohol should constantly keep in mind.
Yes.
But one thing I think is certain, if Bohol can last all of 15 rounds, he's going to walk away with a decision victory.
Only a knockout can win this fight for Chang Ho Choi now.
He's too far behind on points.
Bohol should move away. And time is punch as well. That's the thing. That's the way to do it. Dance away from the Korean. Dance away from the Korean.
Dance away from the Korean, but go into a crouch the way he's doing right now.
Yes.
Because if he maintains an erect stance, a long distance, the Korean can set him up for a devastating right again.
Okay, move away. That's it.
And now Bohol is literally running rings around the Korean.
Now
and the Korean is the very picture of desperation at this point.
He is giving the Korean a boxing lesson now.
This is round 11.
Yes.
The fatal round in which Dodie Boy Penalosa lost the flyweight crown to this same guy atop the ring against Rolando Bohol.
Rolando Bohol. Oh!
The Korean constantly flicking left jab to the face of Bohol, and now tagging him with a right.
Bohol should just dance away.
I don't mind him dancing away as long as he goes into a deep crouch. But the way he's keeping that erect stance is making him a sitting duck with the right hand of the Korean again. All right, Lando is picking up a lot of points with his guerrilla tactics. It's now a stick and dance strategy. Bob and weave, that's the way.
Rolando Bohol now using his brains.
But he's not out of the works.
Korean.
That right hand is still hanging like a sword of Damocles over his head. And he just walked into it. And he's forced to hang on to the Korean for dear life. Another left jab to the face by Bohol. You know, those left jabs by Bohol, well, even his right hooks are not really affecting the Korean that much.
Yes, but right now, I think his concern is just to score and not to score a knockout or a knockdown. He just wants to pile up points. That's the way to fight Chang Ho Choi.
Wow, what a round. The 11th round, which Dodie Boy did not survive in his own meeting against Choi on September 5, and we'll be back. You're back with us here at the Rizal Coliseum for Manila main event. We're on the threshold of round 12 of this 15-round championship bout for the IBF title, the 112-pound flyweight title between Rolando Bohol of the Philippines and the defending champion from Seoul, Korea, Chang Ho Choi. As far as our unofficial scorecard is concerned, Rolando Bohol can very well cruise to victory here as long as he can avoid a punch from the Korean.
Yes. And Rolando Bohol's right eye has totally closed, Joe.
You know, the right hand of the Korean is such that it goes on a crosswise fashion, and that's why it connects. When it connects, it lands on the right side of the opponent's eye. Oh, that's a big mouse on the right eye of Bohol.
Yes, it has totally closed. Dodie Boy Penalosa's eye when he fought Chang Ho Choi.
And like we keep pointing out, fighting with one eye can be a very, very big handicap for the fighter.
Yes.
It renders his vision one-dimensional. Or two-dimensional.
That's the way to fight Chang Ho Choi.
Bohol backing up, playing his cards very smartly. Sticking and dancing, sticking and dancing. But then he had better keep that left hand constantly close to his face.
Yes. He should get away. Get away.
The Korean had his heart and soul behind that right hand. Bohol is hurt again.
Bohol is hurt. Bohol is hurt.
That right hand of the Korean is beginning to get in with impunity.
Yes.
Slowly but surely, Bohol's guard is dropping.
And he is now fighting with one eye. First point for Rolando Bohol.
Well, this was the same handicap suffered by Dodie Boy, which eventually caused his debacle.
I don't know what is behind Chang Ho Choi's gloves, Joe. That they are capable of closing the eyes of his opponent.
I have seen some of his previous fights on tape, the ones he fought against Korean opponents. It's that same right hand which comes through like a jeep ramming a tree.
Yes. Oh,
all right.
Get away. But Bohol comes back with his own combination. Bohol should not get out of the corner there.
The last thing Bohol wants is to be nailed against that rope.
Oh!
By the Korean left and right combination.
Oh!
And Bohol gets jerked again by a staggering right from the Korean. He goes to the body now with a left and right. I think he should move in closer again. Instead of giving the Korean distance, stop dancing. Just stick very close to the Korean and clinch.
There's blood again flowing from Rolando Bohol's cut on the head.
The scalp wound has reopened anew.
Yes.
And blood is freely oozing out of it as Bohol absorbs another devastating combination to the face. And he'll need some smelling salts during this one. Well, I don't know about you, Mr. Pignol, but this fight has driven me hoarse.
Yes.
You know, 15 rounds in a championship fight will last only 1 hour. But the way I feel right now, it looks like I've covered 3 PPA games already.
I'm dead tired now at this point, Mr. Cantada.
You know, I could almost feel the punches, the cracking impact of those right hands being thrown in the direction of Rolando Bohol. And like I was telling June Saryal a few moments back, perhaps Bohol should stop dancing and just keep sticking close to the Korean. If he has to clinch, then let him clinch. He's so ahead on points. All he has to do is survive. Okay, there's the Korean poking that left jab to the face of Bohol again. And his right eye is practically closed. The blood oozing out of the scalp wound inflicted several rounds ago by a headbutt which was not seen by the referee. Here comes the Korean launching another result. Bohol beating him to the punch with a left to the face.
Chang Ho Choi knows that he has to knock out Bohol in order to retain his title here.
You know, if you're talking about volume of punches, unquestionably Rolando Bohol must be 3-1 ahead of the Korean. But then as far as the effect of the punches are concerned, I think the Korean has a decided edge with all those right combinations.
Yes. He is a stronger fighter. He is a stronger fighter.
That guy is bull strong. He is a barroom brawler.
Bohol right now is stuck again with the right. The Korean is willing to take those punches just to be able to dish out his own combinations.
You know, Bohol has thrown everything in but the kitchen sink on the Korean, but the Korean keeps coming back. And now he's got Bohol on the verge of another knockdown.
Bohol should clinch now. He should clinch now.
Bohol is still standing his ground and allowing the Korean to fight from a distance.
Yes.
That could be the tragic error.
Both fighters' faces are a bloody mess right now. Another good left by Rolando Bohol.
This is round 12. We have 3 more rounds coming up after this. Will Bohol be able to stay in a vertical position for 3 more rounds? If he can, then I have a feeling that we would have regained the Flyweight Championship. But then again, the Korean is so dangerous. You can never sit still with this Korean. You can never sit on your laurels with this Korean.
As you have said, Joe, he has the puncher's chance.
And he knows it only too well.
His punches are coming slow, but they're very strong.
Bohol backing up, now absorbing another right from the Korean. I don't know if the blood on the right side of the Korean's face is his own blood or simply Bohol's blood rubbing up on his own face.
Yes, he also suffered a cut. The Korean also suffered a cut.
And the crowd is once again chanting, Bohol, Bohol. They're egging on the Filipino. What a gallant ring gladiator, this young man from Bacolod. Such a nice guy outside the ring, but he has proven himself. And now he's doing what he has to do. Clinch, clinch, clinch.
All right.
You know, everybody heaves a sigh of relief every time that bell sounds the end of a round. With coming up, we'll be right back.
They know that Bohol is coming closer to victory.
If he can survive these last 2 rounds, I am almost certain he will win the Flyweight Championship of the IBF.
Yes. Just 2 more rounds.
Just 2 more rounds, and all he has to do is stay in a vertical position. He has piled up, he has accumulated enough points in the first 10 rounds to win, or rather to win, walking away.
But Bohol has suffered so much injuries.
Wow, this has been a battle of attrition indeed for Rolando Bohol. His face is now a grotesque mask of blood and flesh. He is virtually closed. He's got a 2-dimensional view of things, but look at him coming out of his corner, storming out of it to meet his antagonist. midway in the ring. He's still absorbing those left jabs from Chang Ho Choi, and I know what is on Choi's mind. He's just setting up Bohol for that right hand again, but Bohol is now playing it very smartly. He's dancing and waltzing the Korean around, even to the extent of grappling him.
That should be the way to fight Chang Ho Choi. At this point, when Bohol is leading on the scorecards.
All right, now he's going behind the Korean. He has to keep moving to the right flank of the Korean to get out of the line of fire of that right hand.
Oh, there he goes again. He got tugged with right again. Bohol should get out from there. Get out of...
Get out or hug and embrace. That's exactly how to cope with it. Wow, this is human combat at its pristine best. Doing it for the money? No, they're doing it for the beauty.
This is championship courage for you.
This is the 14th round. This is championship territory.
Bohol should get out of that again. Clinch! Clinch!
You know, one thing is very convincing about Rolando Bohol. He has a lion's fighting heart.
Yes.
So many times he went to the verge of a knockdown as a result of the devastating connection from the right hand of the Korean, but he always managed to come back strongly and offset whatever advantage the Korean may have built up, but he's not yet out of the woods. Okay, that's the way to do it. Bob, weave, and crouch. Go under.
The Korean is still capable of scoring a knockout. That should be the way to fight the Korean at this point.
You know, a lot of people figure the heat and humidity of Manila weather will take its toll on Choi. I don't think so, because the guy is superbly conditioned. And you can see how well he withstood the weather conditions in September against Dodie Boy Penalosa when it was a lot hotter here in Manila. So the weather is certainly not a factor.
So much blood has flown in this fight, Joe. Now Rolando Bohol is standing against Chang Ho Choi again.
It's toe-to-toe slugging, and Bohol's body is now a gory mess.
Yes. Clinch, clinch, clinch. Hold on. Oh!
Tremendous comeback by Bohol.
Yes.
Notwithstanding all the blood he has lost, Bohol continues to stand his ground. Notwithstanding his impaired vision. And to show to the world what a gallant fighter he probably will have the championship. You know, even the referee
He's also a bloody
He's
mess.
no stranger to championship fights, but I think this is the first time he's going to go home with his shirt all soaked in blood. And much of that blood came from Rolando Bohol. But the Korean, make no mistake about it, is not exactly unmarked. The Korean himself sustained a cut about 2 rounds ago. We prepare for the 15th and final round. Dan Cabanilla tried to patch up that scalp wound in vain. It's still oozing blood freely.
The Korean's camp is now complaining that there is an undercutting in the time, the round time. That is a loser's alibi. They are losing.
Well, any accusation to that effect must be proven.
Yes.
I wonder what it was that referee A. Pacheco was telling Bohol. He must have been issuing some kind of a warning.
Bohol hit while he was breaking them up.
That's a no-no. But anyway, Rolando Bohol has played his cards very smartly during these rounds when he teetered on the brink of extinction.
Oh. Bohol should be careful now. This is the last round. He should clench now.
The Korean is going for a last round knockout. This is a last-ditch stand for the Korean champion. He knows the crown is fast slipping from his head, and he knows nothing less than a knockout could possibly keep that crown on his head.
Yes.
But Bohol is as smart as they come. He doesn't mind all that blood. He wants the championship so badly. He's willing to shed half the blood in his body just to get that crown. 1.5 minutes to go in the fight.
Yes,
And the crowd cheering Bohol on.
a few seconds more. If Bohol can only bear on a little longer, a little more longer. Avoid that punch.
And the Korean is now a picture of frustration and utter desperation. His own body is stained with blood. Much of it Bohol, some of it his own. And Bohol is getting a warning for headbutting.
Bohol has just got to survive this round. He has just got to survive this round to win.
And he goes into a clinch again. The smart way to deal with the Korean. Looks like the Korean is getting a big dose of his own medicine.
Yes. A few seconds more. Just a few seconds. Rolando has got to hang on.
A first flurry by the Korean. Much of it avoided by Bohol, who is now clinching and embracing, and that is exactly the way to go for the championship.
Yes.
He built up a big lead very early in the fight. It's insurmountable, except for a possible last-second knockout by the Korean. Hold your breath. Whether that knockout will come will be known in just a few seconds. Oh, there's the bell. It's all over. It's all over. And Bohol goes down.
Ladies and gentlemen,
All right, here is Tommy Romulo.
we have the judge's decision.
Well, we expect the non-neutral judges to hew party lines. Maybe the Philippines...
Judge.
Okay, let's hear it.
Chang Wen scored it 147 for Choi and 143 for Bohol.
Well, I expected that. That was the Korean judges' score. We expected that.
Judge Alex Villacampa scored it 142 for Choi and 145 for Bohol.
So it's now all up to the neutral judge. It's now up to the neutral
Final
judge.
judge Louis Reyes scored it 141 for Choi and 145 for Bohol.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Yes,
the
we have
Philippines
it.
has regained the IBF World Flyweight crown.
We have
Rolando Bohol is the new
Flyweight
flyweight champion of the
champion of the
International
world.
Boxing Federation.